first of all, thank you all for coming. I'm going to apologize in advance. It looks like our slides are a little small for those in the back. So anyway, we are west of center. I'm Josh Strotzel, Michael Stratton, Sean Coughlin, and Eugene Lipkin. I'd like to ask you to consider two baseball players today. First, Adam Dunn. He plays for the White Sox. He hits 40 home runs a year, and he also set the MLB record for strikeouts last year with 199. The second player is Philadelphia Phillies, Chase Utley. Look past the fact that he's on the DL right now. But solid hitter, 300 average, doubles, a few home runs, and he's just consistent. We today have what we would like to call a Chase Utley investment. This is to build 15-story multi-use with first floor retail space, about 7,000 square feet, 14 stories of multifamily, 127 units. We're building it to about a 7.8% stabilized yield, 6.9% going in, so we feel there's about 200 to 290 basis points spread on there of us to get our deal done and still get our return. Additionally, the way we structured it, we go in all equity on the land, and then we get 70% of the construction costs financed, excluding land. Upon completion, we assume that we have 70% of those total costs taken out, which reduces our cost basis by about 40%. So if we were to have to hold this property for a long time, we'd have a lower cost basis, which we think is attractive for the deal. Third, the demographics of the market clearly say rental. It's about 70% renters, 30% home occupied, young demographic. Most of them are from 25 to 35 years old, median income of $97,000. We feel this meets a luxury market, and we've got some rents to prove it. And lastly, there's been no new development in Murray Hill of this product in the last 5 years. There are very few open sites. You look at only conversion, which will not be as nice of a product as ours that we're going to build. There's 160 units at 57th Street. That's 20 blocks north of Hanover Market. Vacancy's been 3.1% for the whole market, and for new products built since 2000, it's only 2.4%, so we feel there's some room there. And also, lastly, the population growth has been 1.6%. Demographics look great for this. And lastly, we're going to lead on this building because we feel that it provides staying power for the building, creates value, and doesn't hurt our economics and helps long term. So nationally, these are national numbers on the slide from the census, except for this last slide. Basically, we're saying even though unemployment only is growing 200,000 jobs a month, this is barely enough to support a flat, no change in the unemployment rate. Unemployment is 8.6 to 9.5%. Could be more if you count the 13 million people who've left the jobs workforce. Capital markets are in flux. We're not sure about how much debt we can get, but this product has been the #1 choice of lenders to finance. We have low leverage ratios and a great product, which we think will have no problem getting financed. Additionally, CMBS is coming back this year. We're seeing, probably see 50 billion this year, down from the peak, but it could go up to about 75 in the next couple of years, which provides some stability for us in financing. Just kind of to look at kind of the other products, look at our kind of risk-return ratios. This is kind of an overview of what we have. Office, we'll go into in-depth, but basically retail we're going to do because it's the only thing that works on that first floor with any sort of, it's just the only thing that makes sense. In any of our scenarios, we do retail on the first floor. It's on 5th Avenue, just makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense. So we'll go through some of these in more depth. So, office. First of all, the building space just doesn't work for office. To get financing for office, we need a big lead tenant. Our floor plate's only about 10,600 square feet. Preferred floor plate of a big tenant would be closer to 25,000 square feet. We don't feel we can get a big lead tenant. Financing will be risky, and the economics just don't work on the deal. And there's also a huge amount of supply coming in at 1 and 4 World Trade Center of about 4.5 million square feet. It doesn't work for office. Hotel. You know, we did all of our thinking on this project on market data. We could not get comfortable with a hotel. It's all based on our assumptions, not on our data. And it doesn't fit our business plan, we don't think, of getting in and getting out fast. Because one, we don't have the competency of a hotel history. Two, we probably are going to have a difficulty to get management company to partner with us on the deal if we don't have this competency. And it takes 2 to 3 years to stabilize a hotel. We think judging from what we've seen in the market, that we can stabilize the apartment. We stabilize it in 18 months. We've seen that 12 months is kind of what it's been over the last year to stabilize an apartment building. So we can get out faster on a hotel or on an apartment building, and the hotel just doesn't offer enough certainty on the returns that we're willing to take it relative to the returns we can get on an apartment. The condo is your quintessential Adam-Dunn deal. You know, you can strike out, lose all your money, you can walk like he does a lot, maybe get your money back, you might hit a home run. We just don't like the fact that you have a lot of certainty and not a lot of options on condo. One, the supply in the market. We're seeing 447 units completed last year, 147 sold in all of 2010. We're looking at 3.5 to 4 years of supply at current velocity. If velocity doesn't increase, you're stuck holding this stuff for 5, 6 years. The only way to cut costs is to cut prices, and you've already given away all the value at that point. You're not getting that back. Apartment, we can cut the rents, fill up the project, release them in a year. As rents grow, we can capture that value. So this just makes sense. Additionally, the only real mitigant for condos is pre-sale. We're just not comfortable with the amount of pre-sale that we can get in this market, and 70% of people that rent. So looking at downside, base case, and upside on condos, our base case, we don't meet our hurdle of 20%. We looked at the 4 main factors that influence the condo return: pre-sales, velocity per month, the cost of construction, and our price per square foot. We're probably a little conservative, but judging from the riskiness of it, the riskiness of the cash flows doesn't meet the risk appetite of our limited partners, and so we're going to pass on condos and go with multifamily, which Mike's going to explore a little deeper.
Thanks, Josh. So when you think about all of these things that Josh just discounted, I'm going to be going through why multifamily. And the way that we looked at this was we looked at what is going to be driving our cash flows. And the things that we pointed out specifically were supply, the development pipeline, demand, and demographics. So when considering supply in the pipeline, what we looked at is we looked at vacancies. So vacancies are around 3.1% for this quarter. In addition, they've, for the past 25 years, been between the band of 2 to 4%. And so we feel that that's a very substantially backed up number that you can really count on for the near future and for the long term. And also, to go along with that, you have an issue with development because it's very difficult to get permits and to complete construction in New York City and Murray Hill specifically, and there's no new supply coming to the market. If you see the chart, we are actually included in Skytown. As Josh mentioned, there's 447 units that just came online, and around 500 to 600 that are either proposed or under construction. There are only 160 multifamily units even proposed, and the building on the building picture up in the upper right-hand corner is the multi-use building that holds those 160 units. It's 20 blocks away. It's on 57th Street, and it's a multi-use building with condo, rental apartments, and retail, and a little bit of office. So it's a very difficult product to be able to produce, and we doubt very much so that it's actually going to be completed. As you can see, the design is pretty extreme. So we just feel that, and that would be at least 5 years down the road. So we feel that the supply and demand equilibrium is very good. This just goes more into depth. This slide just goes more into depth on the fact that there are a lot of condo buildings being currently out there and currently being constructed, and absorption is not meeting the new supply that's coming onto the market. And the demand for multifamily is sky high. The equilibrium is just so much so towards the landlord that it's just absolutely insane. Rents increased 6.4% this past year, even though over about a 25-year period, according to Reese, they actually stayed within a band of 3 to 4% rental growth per year. So we feel that this is more like as Josh mentioned earlier, a Chase Utley deal in the sense that you're going to be able to stabilize, and even in a downturn or an uptick, you're going to benefit, and you're going to be able to get out with a double-digit return, which in condos is much less likely. And the final thing is demographics just work here. The band of the majority of the people here are between the ages of 25 and 34. 72% of them are renters, so it's not an owner's market really. And if you're looking at high-end rental, really you're looking at Fifth Avenue. A lot of people that are coming out of college, They are on the 2nd and 3rd Avenue area of Murray Hill. This is a higher end. It's right near the Empire State Building, and the demographics are just very good. You have a high income base, $97,000 median income, and a well-educated base. So this area just works for multifamily in terms of demographics, supply, demand, and new supply. So now Eugene's going to go through some of the financial data.
Thank you. So, as Mike mentioned, we wanted market data to drive all of our assumptions. So now that we've given you some of that data, I'm going to tell you how we're going to execute on those numbers. Unfortunately, there was a small mistake in the GP box of our performance, so we've given you an updated copy. So here's what I want to point out. If you look in the last 2 years, yield to cost is around 7%, over 7% in the last year. And so we're building it at 7 and we're selling it at 5. That gives us 200 basis points of spread. Moving down to pro forma, if you look at the LP return, we're showing about 19%, which is well above the 15% that our investors are demanding. And then when you move down to the GP box, we're making over $5 million on this deal, and here's what's driving that. 2% developer's fee, and then we put 10% of our equity into the deal, so we're making money with the money. And then the promote structure we set up was above 15% IRR, we get a 15% carry, and then when we hit 20% IRR, we take a 20% carry. So we decided to go lead on this deal. We think that this is the rule rather than the exception. We think investors are demanding lead, and you can look at the financials, and it really doesn't affect our financials. The IRR to the LPs is basically the same. And so the way we modeled this in was we did an 8% increase in construction costs and an 8% decrease in operating costs. We didn't increase rent, which we think we could do. We think that tenants would get a premium to live in a LEED certified building, so we were conservative there. But I think the bigger issue is, real estate's a reputation game, and even if we don't end up making a financial gain on the LEED thing, we want a building that's going to make a positive contribution to the city. So here's our exit strategy. We like that this deal isn't so sensitive to the financing assumptions with regard to the takeout loan. We don't know what's going on in the credit markets in the next few years. They've been in flux lately. So we like this deal because it doesn't make us forecast. The other thing we like is you have options in multifamily. If the next few years aren't so good, you lower rent, fill up the building, and cover your costs. With condos, you end up having to bear the costs, and we just don't think that this risk is something that our LPs want to take. If you look at the sensitivity analysis, the bottom left, you see that even in the case where the cap rate's 6%, we don't get any markup premium on rent. We're still not losing money. We have a positive IRR there. So I've taken you through the numbers. Now Sean's going to talk to you a little bit about the design.
Okay, so if we look at the stacking plan here, we see that we're developing a 15-story building with 127 apartments. You'll see that the first floor is 11,000 square feet of retail, and then additionally we have 14 floors of apartments. You'll also see that in the cellar we put bathroom storage, as well as there's going to be a gym in there. However, we also talked about how there's been a big trend in gyms going into the first floor of luxury apartment buildings, so that's also something we could potentially see as a retail opportunity there as well. Also, we have patio, so we tiered the building in order to capitalize on the FAR and go higher and have more floors. So you'll see that the two top units will charge a price premium for, as they'll get the 750 square foot patios, and then this 2,200 square foot patio down here will have a pool. It'll be more of a community feel for the building itself. So when we're thinking about the building mix and how to actually divide up the units between studios, one bedrooms, and two bedrooms, we went to the demographic data. So if you look at data from the census, you'll see that 60% of households that live in Murray Hill right now have one person living in them. Additionally, the following 30% of people have two people in them. 10% of that number is made up of married couples. So we basically see a market here where 70% of the people really only need a one-bedroom unit. And that's why we've concentrated most of our unit mix on one-bedroom units, with only a mere 23 two-bedroom units and probably around 19 studios. Additionally, if you look at the sub-market data on side count from REITs, you'll see that the majority of properties are smaller and have one bedroom. In addition, we do feel that we'll be able to charge a 6.5% premium. As was previously mentioned, I mean, Murray Hill, the majority of the apartments are more to the north or more towards the river, around 2nd or 3rd Street, and that's what most people think about how college kids moving to that area. But this is on 5th Avenue. It's on the outskirts of the region, and because of that, we believe that we can charge a premium. So how are we going to determine that premium? We went to competitive properties. So we identified 4 of the highest luxury properties in that area. So we see Tower 31, which is a mere block away. That's a new building. The Anthem is highly recognized as one of the nicest properties in Murray Hill. In addition, we have the Montrose and 425 Fifth. If you look at the average rents that these buildings are charging, they're actually charging 8.7% higher than the actual market comps in Murray Hill. We elected to actually be pretty conservative and only put 6.5% premium in our model. And even with that, we're still meeting our 15% hurdle. So we really believe that we'll be able to get the rents that we want, given the high quality of our asset. When it came to amenities, like I was saying before on the stacking plan, we're going to have the 2 rooftop patios with views of the avenue. Additionally, we're going to have a back bike room in the basement, also a storage unit and a gym. So also, as we've been discussed, we're definitely going to be pursuing LEED certification. We're definitely going to want to pursue a green roof, use of low-flow fixtures, but then again, that's something that UDP needs to sit on to decide what components they want to put into the building, and that's really going to drive how much operating savings they really even get. I mean, the average in the industry is around 8 to 9%, but in reality, you can get much higher depending on what you actually pursue with the LEED certification system. Additionally, we believe that as we say that we're making our decisions based on the market, not the assumptions, the market wants green. And they really are commanding, and even governments are mandating green now. You'll see large cities like San Francisco and DC actually mandating on all new properties. So we really think that by doing this, we're really ahead of the curve, and we'll be able to get the profits that we're looking for. Now that I've talked about that, Mike's going to come back in and talk about some of the risks and mitigants.
So when you think about any deal, whether it be hotel, office, condo, or multifamily, really you need to think about the risks and the risk mitigants, and that's how we approach whether deciding yes or no on each type of property. And the first way that you do that is we went through a timeline. So the first major risk that we saw was lease-up risk. When you look at multifamily, it has by far the lowest lease-up risk of any of the competing types of properties that we considered. As you can see from the bottom chart, the market, this is data from Reese, the market says that lease-up is basically between 4 to 5 quarters to stabilized level. We actually built in 6 quarters, a year and a half, to lease up the entire building, and rents have been growing extremely fast, so we consider that even there's a strong possibility that you very well might be able to lease it up in under a year, which would do nothing but make our returns higher. The next issue that we had is after you lease it up, or after you get to that point, then what you have to do is you have to determine permanent financing. And this property is one of the ones that is somewhat of the darling of the capital markets right now. A lot of properties in multifamily in New York is trading sub-5 cap rates, even some sub-4 cap rates. For Class A, we actually modeled it at 5 cap rate, and at that rate, we're basically getting most of our money out and meeting the investor's criteria of getting our money back as fast as possible so that we can carry it for the long term. And then upon the permanent exit, you're really looking at exit cap rate, 5 years down the road is what we predicted. And just the same, you basically have a hedge, whether the market is up or down. If market goes up, then rents rise and vacancy stays between that band of 2 to 4%. If the market goes down, people move out of condominiums, and Manhattan has been and has shown to be pretty immune to overall macro market downturns in terms of multifamily. So we feel this is a very strong asset that the capital markets will appreciate and will deserve that 4% to 5% cap rate.
In essence, Shade's not the deal. Thank you.
Judges, feel free to get a question. Quick question with regard to the rationale for putting permanent financing in place prior to the sale. How do we deal with prepayment issues and assumption issues?
We did assume that we could get in this assumption on the financing.
But assuming that the equity
Well, we also feel that we have other room in the capital structure because we went all equity on the land. Truth, we think that you could get on this project with, some of these fundamentals, you could probably get 40% at least on the land, and then that lowers the amount of basis we have in this project. And then we'd have to look at, once we actually had more data on what kind of loans we could get, what kind of financing we could get, then we'd have to consider, what sort of financing to go with it. We want to have, 2 option year extension on our construction financing to extend that if we want to sell within 4 years. So we'd have to consider what we get on the market.
So you're really concerned about your near term, you want to really build an edge in by putting that permit in place.
Absolutely. Because we want to be able to, we're confident with the next 2 years of what's going to be happen, but you really never know in the long term. So if you're able to get your basis down low enough, you can either carry it and be opportunistic in your sale. And that's going to almost guarantee you a double-digit return.
And I guess one other point, if you get 2 years in, a year and a half in, you can decide if you want to go with a floating rate debt. If you're going to sell within pretty close, you have to determine that along the way.
How much cash are you guys returning?
About, I think it's something like 13 million, I think, goes back to equity.
So then when do you sell it?
We sell the end of the following year, yeah.
So what's your leverage to higher
Wait.
look like if you don't do that?
If we don't put permanent on it, so you're considering if we lease it up for in a year and a half and sell it. I mean, it's. I don't think it's really that different from a year later.
You're selling. We refinance at the end of year 2 and sell at the end of year 4. So you're taking out 13 there. I don't know if we ran the numbers on if you don't get that. I think also one of the mitigants we have to that issue is that you have on this, you're doing 70% of only project costs, including land that you're getting. If you do more of an actual appraisal or on a cap rate risk, as you show on this slide, you're really only at 55% leverage. If you wanted to go a little more, you could, and that's at a 6 cap. 50 to 50, there's some room there. I think that's the issue, to go a little higher on the leverage.
Can you comment on risk as related to huge condo supply, maybe turning it into apartments and further competition?
Yeah, that was definitely something that we considered. But when you look at the supply and demand, absorption this past year for multifamily was 91 units, and there really is no new supply. And we feel that, yes, if condos are converted, if condos don't work out for those people who currently have it built, and some of that 3.5 years of supply gets moved to multifamily, it would probably be high-end multifamily. But from what we've seen, a lot of the projects that you either really need to go multifamily or condo, because your target demographics in terms of income, in terms of what they want, are very different from someone who wants to invest $700,000 in a property and stay long-term versus someone who wants to invest, $3,000 or $4,000 a month in an apartment and is very transient. I think you really need to focus, and it's one of the reasons that we didn't do both, is that you really need to cater towards, in order to optimize returns, you really need to cater towards one or the other, we felt. Because your amenities will be very different and things along those lines. So it was a concern, but we were just very confident in the demand and supply issues.
Another mitigant to that is our rents are based on today. And we're at 6.5% premium today in 2 years. We did not model in any growth between now and 2 years, and rents do 6.5% last year. So that's another mitigant, that if there is more supply, even if rents do not grow in the next 2 years, we're still looking at the similar economics only.
Is this a Roman building?
Yes.
And your 3% operating expense, what does that include?
3%. That's 3% growth. That's
3% growth, yeah.
Operating expense is at
$11.5 a foot.
but then 8% less because it's legal. Yeah, right.
We thought that 8% was conservative.
In the way that we looked at it.
Like I was saying before, I mean, when you do that, you can get significantly even higher operating expenses from that. It just really depends on what you try to do during the pre-development process when you're working with whoever you're working with to do that project.
Did you calculate the return from marketing as a lead property?
No, we didn't build any revenue growth in the lead.
But we think it would only be positive. It would only help us.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Exactly.
Especially if it's an institutional buyer.
And the fact that we didn't build that in, we still get a 15% return, which is the hurdle. And these are all, we feel, are very conservative numbers, or at least conservative mildly.
Cost per unit for those EPs, you guys?
We said 8% on both hard and soft construction.
I mean, if you look at like the USGBC, normally the range that they say for hard and soft costs is between like 4 and 11. So we thought the 8% was pretty conservative.
What about the pool? How did you come up with that idea?
We thought it would be good for the community, you know? I mean, if you have a pool on the building in New York, I mean, that definitely is a really good sales point.
The amenity package is something we need to look at more and decide what, some more competing. We didn't really get completely into the analysis. We kind of looked at some things we could throw around, but we didn't really dig into the amenity package. But we'd obviously have to do that.
What do you guys think are the 1 or 2, 3 largest project risks for the financing market? What are the biggest risks with this project?
One, probably construction cost, to be honest. We got a luxury product, and we're going higher. So that's probably your number one cost, or number one risk on this.
Another one is definitely demographics. I mean, we're targeting a 25 to 35, and we kind of talked multiple times about the fact that a lot of people move to Murray Hill after college. They move there with their friends, they move to like more towards the river, 2nd, 3rd Ave, and normally you make a little more money at your job, and then you move either uptown or downtown, more downtown now. So there definitely is a risk there in the fact that what if people don't still want to live in Murray Hill? But we really think that we've been seeing trends in the market where more people are moving there with friends and wanting to stay with their friends in that area, and that's going to work as a hedge against it. And also we hope that they recognize the quality of product and they're attracted to it and the amenities that it has, and they want to stay in the area because of that.
I'm curious, why didn't you condo the retail? So
That was something we looked at. Our exit assumption on the retail was a 6 cap. So essentially we assumed that we exited retail at the same time we exited the apartments, which would essentially be an implicit condo. I guess is how we did it.
And also we modeled it at around 7,000 square feet. And since we felt that the difference in terms of that aspect, since it would only be 7,000 square feet, it might be, and it also might be just more hassle than it's worth in a lot of ways. And I think that an institutional investor very much so would like to have an entire building in complete control. And we really want to be able to sell to these institutional investors because those are the ones that are getting the low financing costs from Fannie and Freddie and from CMBS in the future, and very well might be able to buy this at a 4 or 5 cap and just increase our profits even more.
What was your retail rent?
$60, $55 in TIs, 5% commission costs on a 5-year lease paid up front on total lease value.
In this market, comps show that the retail rents annually were between $500 and $600 in this area onto that. Once you cross 49, it's actually pretty incredible. It jumps around $2,600 annually per square foot. So,
One minute left. Questions?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. We are Ubequity Investments. My name is Blake Hockenberry, and these are my associates, Eric, William, and Marcello. To begin, I just want to give you a quick run-through of our presentation. First, I'm going to go through an overview of the case and our specific development. Then I'm going to take a step back and talk to you about the economy and some of the different factors affecting real estate development today. Then Eric is going to take you through the use analysis, where he's going to go into detail about the details about each specific property type. Next, William is going to take you through our design and site plan, where we actually created a 3D model for your guys' reference. You can see what we were thinking. And to wrap things up, Marcello is going to go over the financial analysis, looking at the different returns and sensitivity, and also take you through the timeline exit strategy. Now the site is located in the Murray Hills district of Manhattan, close to the Empire State Building. The lot size is around 12,000 square feet with a 12 times FAR multiple, giving you around 144,000 square foot development. Now the different options that we had to choose from were hotel, office, condo, and multifamily. For our specific development, we decided on a mixed use multifamily development with ground floor retail. They're going to go into detail about this a little bit later, but right now I want to talk to you about the economy. Currently, interest rates are at historic lows. The 10-year treasury yields are around 3.3%. We checked them today, and they've shifted a little bit up to 3.59%. The federal funds target rate is expected to remain around 0% at close to a quarter. And what that means is that the cost of capital right now is extremely low. Companies are beginning to borrow and hire people again, and hopefully that's going to be bringing down unemployment. Now, in terms of the Manhattan area, unemployment rates are around 9.7%, which is close to national average. And according to the ULI's 2011 Emerging Trends, this is one of the biggest concerns for experts in the industry, whether these high unemployment rates are actually going to be able to come down and whether or not the markets are going to be able to recover. Now for GDP, 2010 saw around 2.8% growth in GDP. Expectations for 2011 are around 3.3%. Now all these factors considered are leading investors to become more comfortable in investing in real estate. And what that's doing is, as a flood of capital comes into the markets, it's compressing cap rates on core assets in A markets like New York City, Washington, D.C. And what that means for developers like us is that we're going to be able to avoid the pricey valuations that you see up front, and we're going to benefit from these low cap rates later on in price valuations when we exit. Now, going over the demographics, we created this pie chart, and I think it shows that a significant portion of the local population is between the ages of 25 and 54. Now, in terms of household income, you can see by these two green pieces that the local population has a large part of its people who make over $100,000 a year. Now, Eric is going to go over the different use analysis.
Thank you, Lee. Now, I'm going to go over the quick analysis of the 4 different property types that are available for us to develop and talk about the pros and cons of each one. First, to give you a quick snapshot of the New York market. Currently, hotels are trading about $306 a room per night, with the vacancy around 15.7%. It's coming down a little bit, but getting a little better. Condos are selling about $950,000 a unit, and office and multifamily units are trading about $55, $56 a square foot. However, office is much more higher in vacancy at about 11% versus the strong demand for multifamily units, which are commanding a vacancy rate of only about 1.2. Now, in our analysis, we also considered a lot of the construction costs and financing available. Most notably, you can see the financing and construction costs with hotels is quite high. In fact, the least favorable financing option throughout the rest of the properties. And the office and multifamily units are about $308 per square equal to build. However, the construction loans associated with each one of them vary differently. Most notably, the loan to cost ratios and capital required to invest in these is a lot higher with office and the available recourse. This graph here shows how much more favorable multifamily is for this construction loans. We can leverage more of our capital up to 70% of the construction value. In addition, only guaranteeing about 10 to 15% versus 100% required by office. Now, to go through each property type analysis, I'll give you the pros and cons and then why we chose to or not to invest in this. First off, hotels. You can see it's dipped down quite a bit since the 2007 levels. However, it's showing quite good signs of recovery. There's a lot of some new development going on right now. The map there shows some of the new hotel projects that are supposed to come online within the next couple of years. Some of the benefits there, some of the risks we took into consideration, the high operating costs associated with operating a hotel, and the high vulnerability and correlation with the economic climate. Additionally, like I mentioned before, the high construction costs and unfavorable financing terms doesn't make this a very attractive investment for us. When we did dig a little deeper, we noticed that this area, Murray Hill and East Midtown, only occupies about 11% of the hotel market. Most hotel and the associated demand with them is on the west side and in downtown as well. So those are the main factors why we chose not to invest here. As far as office goes, there is again some benefits and signs of recovery there. Again, as the rents have stabilized along with vacancy. However, there's still very little construction going on. In fact, there's only 2 major projects that are going on in New York right now. One, the World Trade Center Tower, and then, this Wednesday, they started construction again on the Gem Tower in the Diamond District. With that, cap rates again are very low here, which makes it a very pricey asset to invest in. In fact, the 6% is the lowest in the US here. Now,
through our financial analysis of this office, we found it very difficult to obtain leverage IRRs above 10%, given the investor's time frame. A longer hold period would be needed to get higher returns, so we could utilize the cash flows associated with this property, and it just wasn't possible because you'd have to hold it for up to 10 years or so. So given the investor's requirement and our associated risk tolerance with 100% recourse, we found this investment to be very unattractive, so we moved forward with some of our analysis. Most only condos, again, once the hottest market in New York, was very attractive. A lot of development created a lot of excess supply, which then, now when the downturn occurred, pricing has dropped, very little demand, in addition to the higher construction costs and available financing. While I do think there is some potential there to make decent returns, it's not as significant as with multifamily, mainly because the returns associated with condominiums depend a lot on the market demand and the available financing options. So that brings us to multifamily, which is our product of choice. Rents are increasing, vacancy is extremely low at about 1.2%. There's strong demand. Additionally, the cost of build is relatively cheap to the other product types, and the cost of capital is very low. Low on the equity side and low on the debt side. This makes it very attractive, and we're going to go into a little bit more of the financial analysis a little bit later. But for now, I'll give you a quick recap of what we just went through. Again, hotels, really expensive, high cost of capital. Office, the market's just not there, and the 100% recourse is main deterrent for us. And then condominiums, again, there is a possibility. We will look at this option again as the development process goes through with multifamily. If it does seem to be attractive to reinvest the property as condos within the next 6 months, we keep that option open. Right now, we're going to go with multifamily due to the low construction costs and favorable financing terms. Now, to give you a quick snapshot of what we're going to do with the property, I'm going to pass off to William, and he's going to talk about our design.
Thank you, Eric. As Blake mentioned earlier, we decided to go with a 12-story mixed-use multifamily development project. The project consists of 108 residential units, which also has a retail component on the ground and cellar level of the building with a rooftop lounge and workout center as an extra added benefit for our tenants. Behind me, you can see the progression of our model or our projected project from its progression from a sketch model that we hand drew all the way to our 3D final model that we created using a CAD software. So that's the final product which we are very proud of and we feel will attract a lot of tenants. Now to just briefly touch on base on the retail component of the property, we went with 2 strong credit tenants which we placed for illustration purposes, a Starbucks and a Forever 21, just to show the type of tenants that we would be attracting to this property. Now, I'm going to touch on the rooftop portion. As you can see, the state-of-the-art, full-service workout center where you can get a workout while enjoying the scenery. If working out is not the tenant's forte, they could always go outside to the patio, enjoy the scenery, and just have a nice social gathering. Our target demographic is working professionals between the ages of 24 and 44 years of age with an average annual income of over $100,000 per year. The picture below we feel is a spectacular view of the New York City skyline as well as of the Empire State Building. We feel this dynamic portrait will be able to attract the type of tenants that we are looking for to occupy this property. Now to break down the unit mix, we have 70 units of 1-bedroom apartments at 800 square feet. For our rental prices, we put up average market rates above, but we feel we can charge in the higher end because this is a luxury new development project. Just for reference, we put a floor plan of our 1-bedroom apartments up on the top right-hand corner. Moving down, we have our 2-bedroom at 30 units at 1,100 square feet. And lastly, we have 9 units of 3-bedroom apartments at 1,700 square feet. So lastly, just to touch on the retail one more time, we feel that the retail component of this property will be able to attract tenants to our project. We'll be able to provide steady cash flow for potential buyers when we decide to exit and provide a low rollover risk since the retail vacancy rates in Manhattan currently are just below 2%. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Marcello, who will be discussing our financing and timeline.
So I'm going to go over the financial summary, and before I do that, there's a lot of numbers, and I'm going to go through them relatively quickly in a short time, so just bear with me. So the first three major assumptions that we made that really drive our returns are the 20-month hold, the $55 a foot blended rental rate, and the 5 3/4 exit cap. And we ran sensitivity analysis on all three of these assumptions, but right now let's see what returns we get with this. With these assumptions, we get a sales price of $92 million, and on an unlevered basis, we get an equity multiple of 2.38, an unlevered IRR of 14.2%, an unlevered NPV of 6.8 million. And then on a levered basis, we get a 2.01 times equity multiple and a 24.7 IRR. Now, a few key assumptions we made that weren't provided in the case. We were conservative with the rent growth, having no rent growth in the first 2 years while we're constructing the project, and then in years 3 and 4, while we hold it, just 1 and 2% rent growth. At the same time, we still assumed a 3% expense growth rate, and we additionally underwrote $250 a door for replacement reserves and 15 cents a square foot for CapEx reserves. We also added a 5% contingency into the total development costs and 4% closing costs at the time we exit with our 5 3/4 cap rate. So this is how our capital stack will look when we first start construction. The bottom capital stack is the 70% LTC construction loan, and then the top of it is the 80-20 split equity piece, which adds up to a total capitalization of about $65 million. Once we take out this loan with permanent financing, the original capital stack will go away, we'll cash out with $11 million, and then we'll replace it with a new capital stack on a permanent basis with a 67% LTV permanent loan, and I'll explain why that is in a second, and then the new appreciated equity piece on the top for a total capitalization of around $92 million. Now, once we take out this loan, we will have the senior loan and the cash out, and then we also added in 1 point for financing costs and 1 point for closing costs into our sources and uses. Also note that we added an interest reserve that we will provide from our cash out that will carry the property above a 1.0 debt service coverage ratio until it leases up completely. Now, to get the senior loan amount of $61.2 million, we underwrote it based on LTV and debt service coverage constraints. LTV constraint obviously was 70% as given in the case, and the debt service coverage rate was 1.25. Since it was constrained by DCR, we got a 67.5% LTV loan of about $61.2 million. Now, once we've got the construction loan taken out, we will start to lease up our property. And we've made these leasing assumptions, but we will lease about 15 units each month for the first 3 months, and then thereafter about 5 units a month. With this lease-up schedule, we think we can hit our target occupancy, which is conservative, at stabilized 92% of the entire project. Now, after we lease up, we will start obviously to make cash flows. And we will split these cash flows with a waterfall structure we came up with that has 4 tiers. The first tier, the pref, 15%. Thereafter, it's 18%, 20%, and the last tier is all cash flows above a 20% IRR. For the splits, the first tier is pari passu between investor and promoter at 80-20, then it goes to 70-30, 60-40, and for the last tier, it's 40-60 in favor of the promoter UDP. Now, with this waterfall, we get promoter returns of 29.4% IRR and a profit of about $9 million. For the investor group, we get about a 22% IRR with a profit of about $11 million. Now, mind you, the project IRR was around 24.7%. Now, we picked this waterfall for a specific reason. We played with a lot of different hurdle rates, a lot of different splits between the tiers, but as you can see the effect on our rental rate, any rents that decrease during our project lifetime, the investor, highlighted in green, will be protected if rents go down. If rents go up, then the investor benefits, but most of all, the promoter, UDP, will benefit from this waterfall structure. So the next major assumption, as I said before, was our 20-month hold period. We can see with another sensitivity analysis that this was the right time to exit based on an IRR graph. We can see right at the 20-month mark, our IRRs peak for the promoter and the other 2 groups, and then starts to decline. Same thing with the equity multiple. We hit our 2 times target equity multiple, and from then on, it slowly increases. Our last major assumption, the 5 3/4 cap rate. You can see with sales price, it goes down about 2% for every 25 bip increase in our exit cap. This is a problem though for us because you can see again on an IRR basis, even if we increase our asset cap by 50 bips to 6.25, we still are above our target IRR 15% for the promoter, for the investor, and the entire project. Next, I'm just going to go through a quick timeline of the investment prices. So month 1, we're going to go hard on the land price of $21,600 and get the 70% LTC construction loan and start funding in August. Then in month 9, we're going to start looking at maybe a potential conversion of some units to condos to maybe boost our yield, if that is even feasible. Otherwise, we're going to start marketing our units so we can get some pre-leasing going before our construction loan ends. And then in month 25, our construction loan will finish, will get taken out by the perm that I mentioned earlier, and we will target our stabilized occupancy of 92%. 12 months later, we'll hit our occupancy of 92%, and now we'll start marketing the asset to dispose of it within the upcoming months. So now, in month 44, as we projected, the final month, we will sell the asset for $92 million, pay off the balloon payment for about $60 million, and pay all other closing costs and associated fees. So our last month cash flow, this is just a summary of it. So we have our last pre-tax cash flow of $88,000, and then we have the sales price, the balloon payment, the closing costs, and we come up with a final month 44 levered cash flow of $28,404,000, which brings us to a month 44 cash on cash of 145%, and then it lets us hit our 2x equity multiple and the 24% IRR that I talked about earlier. So all in all, we think that this investment really sort of occupies a sweet spot on the risk-return spectrum. If you're a more yield-chasing investor, you'll look at this and you'll say, this is great that we're exiting the project earlier, I'll get my capital back and a return. If you are a more conservative, risk-averse investor, you'll say, this is good because they're building multifamily, which is a bread-and-butter asset in an area that makes sense, that is an A market, and a unit mix that makes sense for the surroundings and will really blend into the community. We hope that you agree that this is an investment worth pursuing, and with that, we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. In the sub-market, there were, we didn't find too many new developments coming online. There have been a couple residential units that were built in the last couple of years. But that said, we still use conservative rents. Those other markets that came online in new buildings, they were more about the 60% or $60 per square foot rents. We were a little more conservative with the 55. Which just adds another level of benefit when we go to market them as well. I'm not too sure there's too much on these slides.
How do you guys really compete with like condo shadow for rent?
For rent?
Yeah.
As far as considering the condo option?
So tenant has the option of renting a condo that someone owns from you or renting your building. How do you feel it's compete?
Based on that, I think with our tenants, it depends on the building as well, but we offer a lot more amenities with it as far as the gym that you went over, the rooftop area, those sort of resources that just come with the property and the tenant in our building. Additionally, typically it's going to be a little bit cheaper to rent from a bigger property owner because we can justify lower cost by spreading them out through so many units versus a residential condo that it's going to pay HOAs as well and other fees associated with it. So it's going to be a higher cost for the homeowner versus we can lower costs and be a little bit more competitive on the price scale.
What was your market research on the, I think you had your studios at 8 per square feet? Sounds pretty crazy.
No, one bedroom.
One bedroom, yes. Based on the target market, we found again the average age range was typically in the 35 to 44 range, a little bit lower as well, 25 to 44. So these are going to be new families, startups, newlyweds, small households basically. They're not too big, but not straight out of college necessarily. So based on the demographics in the area, we built our model around that. And again, it was sort of an average in that area. Some of them were a little bit lower, but we did see quite a few units in that range as well.
The debt yield assumption, Greg, where do you get that? Just out of curiosity. That sort of gives me one leverage.
Yeah, it was a little low, but we know that a lot of multifamily perm loans aren't necessarily written on a debt yield constraint. They're more concerned with debt coverage. It was an 8.5 debt yield. If that was an office or hotel, that would be a no-go. But that we were constraining it based on those two factors. I mean, we didn't want to make too many assumptions. We wanted to make our own assumptions, but the case only said constrain it on 70% LTV. We know in the real world, that's not completely realistic, just because it's 70%. So we used the DCR constraint, and the debt yield was a little low, but I think based on the underwriting, it would still support it. Say again?
What was the cap? What was the cap?
The exit cap.
On permanent financing, what was the cap rate you used on NOI? Did you write it down?
Yeah.
70%, what was the cap?
The cap rate we used was 5 3/4 or a little over that. I'm sorry, 5 3/4 or 5 3/4 or a little over that.
William, what's your retail rents?
Retail rents, they're at about 60. Yeah, we did a lot of research in the area there, and most retail rents were pretty much about $60.
$60 net, right?
Correct.
Very much. Was it William, Bill, or Bill?
This is William.
Will.
Eric.
Bill, Bill.
Yeah, Eric.
All right. Eric, no, I'm sorry. William, I went in, here's the question.
Okay,
William, so $60,
correct.
who's paying that in basement?
It was $58, I believe, isn't it?
Is Forever 21 gonna pay $60 in the basement?
I'm not quite sure about that.
Not quite sure, wait a second. Not quite sure? You got $60, I'm assuming 12,000 square feet, right? That's in your model that you're gonna convert and then tell me that I'm gonna go make a lot of money on 2 times equity, presumably, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna get $60 in the basement.
Basement or first floor?
On the first floor.
The first floor rent.
First floor, I'm asking you about the basement. Well, you told me I had 2 floors, right, of retail.
The ground level and as well as the cellar.
The cellar floor is at a lower rental rate.
I agree to that. How much lower is it?
It's $50 a foot for the cellar.
Who's paying $50 a square foot?
We think that based on the location and the research that we did, and that some tends to occupy a little bit of cellar space.
With no frontage, no signage, and no direct access off the street, I mean, $50 a foot.
There is, because it's the same tenant on the ground floor, you still have that signage and access directly. In the store is your access to the
You can
cellar.
walk in and pay $50, I think that's overstated, we'll come back to that. So, Willie, now I'm gonna go, what's my cost per unit, or cost per square foot to build this property?
The cost per square footage
Yeah.
is, of the whole project,
Yeah,
126,000 net rentable square footage, I believe.
okay, cost per square foot to build it.
You're talking about total hard, soft, and land costs?
Cost per square
What was
foot.
it? It was about 300. What was this?
It's 308 for our hardened costs, including financing charges. With the purchase of the property, you're at about, that's 150, so you're 458 total cost.
Okay.
Purchase
And
and,
that's based on what's told you in the
Case.
in the write-up, in the case, right? Okay, in the case, they didn't have a pool, they didn't have a workout place. I like that, by the way. But how much more money is that?
we didn't have a pool up there. That added a slight increase to the cost.
Didn't have a pool?
No, we just had a workout and lounge chairs.
We took out the pool.
But I think we should have a lot of.
You're saying how much more expensive is that command by putting that in?
What's this?
You're saying how much more expensive is it
Yeah.
by putting up the gym and the lounge chairs?
How much more cost?
Well, the cost we actually reflected in the, that's part of the reason we put in the 5% contingency, and part of the reason we also underwrote the extra replacement reserves, just for some of the lounge chairs. We don't think it's a big capital
Great
cost.
lounge chairs, how about the gym? How much more is that?
The gym per foot, how much
Yeah.
more is it? I can't say off the top of my head.
And so, again, these are prices indicative of typical luxury apartments, not necessarily super high end, but above average. So the luxury apartments represent that, which would include those costs and the soft costs as well.
Question for you, why didn't you guys go after studio apartments?
Again, it was based on the target market. In that area, we didn't see a lot of really younger, like out of college occupants. They typically higher income, above 100K. Again, smaller family styles.
Right, economically, right now, it makes sense to do multifamily just because people don't have as much money until, the markets rebound a little bit more. And so they're looking really to deleverage and cut costs wherever they can.
It's a possibility. That did go into consideration. But again, we figured that it is indicative of the area. Most of those assumptions on pricing, unit size, and mix is all coming from our analysis of the market that we did.
In averages.
Within that area. I know a lot of other areas offer a lot more studios and a lot smaller spaces. But again, that's just indicative of what we determined from the market research we did.
If you look at an overall Manhattan average for some of the metrics we use, it would be a little different, but for that specific area, within the 3-mile radius, Murray Hill, those numbers and those sizes of the units were, I think, were consistent.
By the way, Forever 21, get a Times Square, at 3 floors of retail.
There's actually
I
I think they did.
there's actually a Zara that
Alright,
is.
so how much more you got to your basement? How much more your basement? Like I said, Apple Store's blowing up, right? But they got a whole queue for that car.
There's also a Zara store that's actually a couple blocks away from here on 5th Avenue, and actually their first floor is actually very small, and then it does go down to the cellar where their main store is. Obviously they come in, lower rents there, but just a few blocks away, there's a store that does have retail on the.
So what are street rents for new glass storefronts, not the cracky, like straight back alleys, but what is the street rent for the first one? That's the question.
It was, again, we figured it was a $6. We did a lot of search trying to separate them and try to get closer into this market and this product type. Without the availability of talking to experts on the ground and just gathering the market reports online, we had more of a general pricing per square footage, although the 60 is a little bit on the higher end, given the location here, which will change the rents drastically in a few blocks. But it's basically indicative of general retail, not so specific of deli in an older building or glass frontage of a brand new building.
One of the problems that we faced in going back to that, we found a range of rents and was between 60 and 72 or whatever. That was that they didn't give us the exact site and where it faced, because part of 5th Avenue is totally different than 5th Avenue, a few hundred yards, So there was a range of rents, so we sort of just had to try to ride the middle ground or just feel, intuitively assume what we thought was appropriate. I mean, it's hard to know. If we knew a specific site, then we could probably pin it down a bit better.
All right, Marcel, so you got 80 foot of frontage, you're giving basic space at $50 a square foot, right? I think your rents are overstated, and if they are, you just told me interest rates will start lows, right? So if that's the start lows, you're gonna sell this out. If there's any uptick in interest rates, you're not gonna sell it at the same cap rate, right? Right, okay, so your cap rate is probably overstated, your rent's overstated, cap understated, right?
Yeah.
So when that all unravels, who's making money?
Well, that was the purpose of the sensitivity analysis. The cap rate, we showed that even if cap rates do appreciate, we're exiting at a 5 3/4 cap, okay? We showed that even if cap rates do increase 50 bips to 6.25%, we're still hitting our target 15%, we're actually hitting 17% IRR for our project, our promoter, and our investor. With the rents,
Lower rents, higher costs.
yes, even with the lower rents.
Even if the cap rate is 6.5.
We showed that the lower rents on the sensitivity also, even if they go down, we still hit our 15% target IRR.
Good afternoon, partners and principals of Urban Development Partners. My name is Adam Draskin. I'm here with my team, Ardona Wiener, Michael Fingerberg, and Mike Porter. We believe the key to success of any financial venture is meeting the triple bottom line of profit, people, and planet. We intend to do this by giving you and your investors the highest risk-weighted return, giving your customers the highest quality and most responsive product, and doing so in a responsible and sustainable fashion. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you the opportunity of your careers. An empty plot of land in the middle of New York City on 5th Avenue for a low acquisition price and a low construction cost environment. This is the chance to create a new launchpad for the wave of urban development of the future. We believe the best way to define the proper opportunity for investment is to first and foremost evaluate and follow the objectives and goals you and your investors have set. Then survey the market landscape and see what possibly fits those goals. We believe that retail, office, hotel, multifamily, condominium, student housing, and possibly a quick flip of the property all fulfill those options. We then decided to pick the option with the highest NPV and the highest qualitative factors. We believe that NPV is a good metric because it gives you a holistic view of value, incorporating risk and timing of cash flows.
Real estate is about location, location, location. And our site is in the heart of the world. It's next to Madison Square Garden. You have Knicks and Ranger games going on. You have the theater district. You can go see a play at Les Mis. Take your family to a picnic in Central Park or Grand Central Station and go up to Westchester and visit your in-laws. At the same time, there are young, wealthy families moving into this market. Now let's take a step back and look at the general trends of this market. We've seen foreign and institutional money re-enter this market, pushing up prices. Retail has the highest rents per square foot. However, there's a constraint on our development for it due to strict zoning laws. The debt markets have revamped, especially with the resurgence of CMBS markets, lowering the cost of capital to our investors. And multifamily have been trading at cap rates between 4 and 5%. Now let's take a look at the multifamily market in greater detail. The multifamily market has the strongest fundamentals. It has high absorption and low delivery, mainly due to the lack of product expected on the pipeline for the next 2 years. That, coupled with the tremendous amount of condos that have been built over the past several years, have constrained the supply of rentable apartments in the area. At the same time, there's a strong demand. People want to rent, especially young families. That is why the expected rental growth for multifamilies in this submarket for the next 5 years is between 4 and 6%, highlighting why a multifamily development is the right play on this site.
So multifamily, Wally B is our proposal, our development concept for UDPs. It's not another big glass box. It's not some commodity building. At its base, the Art Deco facade is in context with and reference to the beautiful revival architecture along Fifth Ave in that corridor. From there, it builds up at human scale. There's no blank space. There's consideration to light and consideration to movement throughout the space as we torque each floor plate going up and then surrounded it using a curtain wall. Additionally, the mixed use aspect complements the multifamily core, and the lifestyle center, the retail. This adds to the vibrancy of the building in consistency with the neighborhood. It's what the renters are looking for. So all of this, as it goes from this traditional base up to this distinct international, modern, practical tower, creates a very distinct brand for this asset. Now, for investors, this would mean that this is our exception to the development freeze going on, especially in light of the land being acquired for about half of its comparables and construction costs down about 25% since the Great Recession. Additionally, UDP, this development is multifamily. That's UDP's core focus. That's their expertise. Also, this horizon we considered, as a developer, we're not building and holding for cash flows. Our money is made in the value add process. So we're building, we're stabilizing, and we're selling. In this scenario, we're looking at an up market over the next 4 or 5 years, and additionally, institutions and foreign funds coming into the fray and increasing competition for these sorts of trophy assets in primary gateway cities. That is why this is the best opportunity. It will produce the best asset value exiting the project. And let's look at, so our values that we were able to derive were precise to a unit level. We looked at the market, saw that in this reurbanization trend, where young people are aware that housing prices could go down, and they're hesitant to buy. All of a sudden, these larger units are more in demand, and there's a lag on that. We're going to fill that void with these 2 and 3 bedrooms that we've focused on, and where we can demand a premium rent. And that's part of the driver for this project. Do you want to take the rest of
Yeah. So just as Mike mentioned, we're going to have 110 units total, and the average rent is going to be $5,000 per unit, which may kind of initially seem high if you sort of live in the city. It might seem high to you. But the reason is because we're going to focus on those 2 and 3 bedrooms that do demand those higher rents. And we could go kind of more in depth in Q&A if you're interested. The other point on that slide that I wanted to point out is the NPV value. So if you can't make it up, it's $76 million is the net present value, and we're selling the property in 2017. It becomes operational in 2013. This may seem like a very high NPV, but again, as Mike mentioned, the reason for it is because the land is acquired for roughly half of what an infill in this area would cost by our market estimations, and the construction costs given in the case are quite low. And of course, we'll go into detail. To split up the RELP, we have the LP and the GP. We assume 90% of the equity comes from the limited partners, only 10% comes from the general partners. And there's an 8%, initial 8% of returns go to the LP, and then after that it's a 65-35 split. So that gives us a 44% IRR to the limited partners, which is greater than the 15% hurdle rate stated in the case. And the GP gets a very healthy return of 127%. So again, we sort of caution you to think about that return in an absolute sense, because we're using the assumptions given in the case to create this value. We also did an analysis where we used kind of more comparable market costs for building a very high quality asset, such as the one that we are going to present to you. And we're happy to get into those as well.
Okay, so we've tried to avoid having tunnel vision in considering the highest and best use for this proposal. So we considered all the core assets and even out to more exotic options. Over a timeline, first would be just flipping the infill. Maybe you can get double for it. That's great from an IRR perspective, but ultimately the absolute returns aren't there. It's not fully utilizing the property's value. And on top of that, you're introducing significant reinvestment risk with that sort of horizon. You run into the same issues if you were to just build retail. So while the rents are the highest, you're constrained by space and zoning laws in the area. So again, in the retail scenario, your absolute returns aren't there, and you also expose yourself to reinvestment risk with the fund. Further, office, people are doing more with less in terms of office, and spaces that used to be in New York are now in secondary or tertiary cities, and technology is also allowing people to operate more efficient. So there's just really weak growth prospects for the office market. And then on top of that, you're looking at about $45 in rent for the area, which is below any other use that we've considered. Next, hotel is an interesting play with the economy picking back up and tourists and business travelers back in the city, which is great for hotels. But ultimately, that play, we've kind of missed the boat on it, because we're looking at building and completing and renting 2 years out. And hotels the first to rebound because leases reset nightly. And then additionally, we would have to consider our operational capabilities as far as running a hotel. Lastly, condo would be the most similar to multifamily, except with staggered returns. As Ardon mentioned, condos have been overbuilt. They're the majority of deliveries in the market, with minority of market share, and people are still flocking back to rent. So that does not make sense either, especially with additional rents. There is one more actually, a more original proposal, if you're sick of seeing multifamily.
Sure. So we also thought about university housing. When we looked on Google Maps just to kind of find out where this property likely is,
we found that it's really close, within a mile or two of 5 different college campuses. So there are 2 CUNYs, there's Baruch, Yeshiva University, and then also NYU is very close by. NYU, we think, is kind of the more interesting play here, because they announced the NYU 2031 plan, which is a plan to buy or lease 6 million additional square feet on top of what they've already got sort of in the Greenwich Village area. We think it's an interesting play because if we put a dorm up in that area, roughly you could hold maybe 500 or 600 students, and we think it might be a really interesting play. They bought a dorm that was previously condos 2 years ago on 23rd and 3rd Avenue, which is also not far from this lot. So we're thinking maybe they're interested in that. There are a few upsides to doing university housing. First of all, as some of us probably know, dorms are expensive. They can charge high rents, and that's only for 8 months. And they can turn around and re-rent that same space or that same bed space, again, for the summer. And given the location of this dorm, it would probably be attractive to students maybe interning in the city. So we think there'd be strong kind of summer demand there as well. And so because they can charge a lot for the rent, it's a valuable property to a college, we thought. There's some downside. You have single tenant risk. Maybe the community doesn't want a dorm there, for various reasons. But that's something you kind of have to investigate with community boards, and we would suggest looking into it. And then finally, you wouldn't want to build a dorm unless you had either a long-term lease or a commitment to purchase it from a university. But if you could secure that, or at least investigate it, we think it'd be a really profitable and interesting plan. So back to the multifamily idea, I kind of want to tell you what's the most interesting part of this, of the pitch. Like, what's so interesting about this building that separates it from any other multifamily interests or pitches you've heard today. And the difference is the technological integration. We thought about who might live in this building, and we thought we were going to have Wall Street types. We might have some Mass Anatomy types. We're going to have people who are on their laptops, on their computers, on their BlackBerries. They have a secretary to organize their messages. They want efficiency. They're used to efficiency in their professional lives. And we want a building that will cater to that when they come home. So while we develop the building, we're also going to develop an application for their phone. So it would be like a mobile app for a BlackBerry, for an iPhone, for whatever they've got. And the app is going to be great. It's going to pull together the living experience. If the light bulb's out, the toilet isn't working, you use your app to put in the maintenance request. If you know you're going to have a guest coming tomorrow, you can put in your request to the front desk using the app. If you need to speak to the concierge, you use the app for that. We could do a Facebook function. So sometimes young renters kind of want to get to know the people they live around, but it's hard if everyone's door is closed. So we can do almost like a Facebook setting within the app. You can use it to book common space, and the list goes on and on. We think this can be a real interesting selling point for the building, and something that differentiates it from all the other sort of glass boxes that are trying to be young and hip. This is really taking it to the next step. And we think it's going to revolutionize sort of the resident living space interaction.
The Wall Terrace is not just on the cusp of technological innovation, it's also going to be one of the greenest multifamily buildings in the city, as given by our Gold LEED certification. Many people think that green is just a trend to come and go, but we believe that green is a driver of cash flows, both on the revenue side and the cost side. Being green gives you a higher quality tenant who's willing to pay more and provide more stable, longer term cash flows. Also, if green energy is done right and done responsibly, we'll have huge savings in the operating perspective. So as we can get more cash flow, we can get more value today for it. Now, we believe the best way to make this green is geothermal energy, solar, and using gray water recycling to water our terraces. Also, the app that Mike mentioned is going to cause for paperless operation, which is great. So you don't have to spend any money for paper. It's more convenient, it's faster, it's the wave of the future. We believe that green is a response to the tenants that we want and a response to increase the returns for our investors. Now, hopefully we've given you a context within which this building is designed. Now I want to give you a more personal feel. So as we walk off of 5th and turn to the street, we're walking into the Wallaby building by a beautiful park-like plaza. Dwarf elm trees, dwarf oak trees, and fresh perennial herbs. The smell of mint, rosemary, thyme, just wafting through the air. As we walk up to the doors, the doorman Fabrizio opens it up. How you doing? We walk into the lobby. The lobby, kept cool by the geothermal energy. On our right, the concierge. On our left, a lobby with computers, iPads, a place for your guests to wait and not waste their time. Here at Wallaby, we don't waste energy, we don't waste time, and we certainly don't waste money. Now, you look to me like a 2-bedroom. Young guy, recently married, beautiful wife, kid on the way. Congratulations. Let me show you what we have. Now notice, as we walk in, the lights turn on. The air conditioning starts to buzz. Everything here is energy saving. When you enter, it turns on. When you leave, it turns off. Now let's walk into the bedroom. As we walk in, the steel curtain design allows for sunlight to bathe the room. Natural light, natural heat, filling every corner. Tremendous, tremendous. Oh, excuse me, let me get this. Oh, it's my Wallaby app. It's telling me the concierge is a package for me. And my neighbor, Tom Fox, is watching my kids while I show you the rest of the building. So let's go down to the terrace. The terrace on the 3rd floor is beautiful. 2,000 square feet of sun-baked blue sky, covered with trees, the sweet smell of roses and orchids. This is nature in the center of the city. But that's not even the best part. The view is amazing. Look down south. You have the arch on Washington Square Park. To the north, Central Park. And right in front of you, the Empire State Building. And the best part, 5th Avenue in all its beautiful commercial glory. I love this building. I got a place right at the 16th floor. I'm putting my mother in on this. The Wallaby is you. It is your lifestyle, but most importantly, it's your home. Now that I've hopefully given you a general context of the building, let's quickly go to some financials and a wrap-up. As we said before, the Wallaby is the project with the highest return from our perspective. But return is not just all it is. This is an opportunity for us to differentiate ourselves and start a new wave of development. We fulfill all the needs of our customers by giving them a green, integrated, and unique experience while giving our investors a great return and a great way to start the future of development. So I encourage you to follow your fiduciary duty to yourselves, your baby's college fund, and your investors, and invest in a Wallaby Terrace. Thank you for your attention. We'd be happy to take any questions.
So I love your vision, I love your brain, love the energy, right? Love the innovation. But tell me why this is going to work. Why? Tell me how your mix of apartments, the sizes, you guys are pushing the envelope. You know, to me, it almost feels like you're just trying to be too different. So tell me the data point that supports the rents that you guys are whatever.
So as far as rents, Simon's first multifamily development actually just came in on 31st and 6th, and they were charging. These are smaller units actually, which is part of the reason why we chose to go bigger, because we saw the demand there versus the constraints. Smaller, but for 650 and 850 square foot units, they were going for, I can double check, but it's $660 and change per square foot per month, and we were at $616 or $614.
Per square foot, what your unit sizes are, your 3-bedrooms.
Yeah, and as we look through the latest research report, actually, versus and the comparables, will support that there's an upward curve as you go build out in square footage per unit, and there's a premium on the 1,200 versus the 1,000, or the 1,500 versus the 1,200.
And at the same time, we're trying to meet the trend. The trend has been for younger families to move in with 1, 2, or 3 kids. The amount of families that moved into that area increased by 30% last year, and it's expected to continue its increase. So we're trying to meet that growing apartment size trend in an area that lacks it.
To add on to that, I think the important thing is we're selling comfort you can be comfortable with. And I think that really is the dream of the future. And in a lot of terms, this app adds a lot of value. How much does it cost? Maybe $40,000 to develop it, but the value you get, the differentiating factor, the branding, is I think pretty substantial. Even some of the green developments, if done right and done responsibly and done in a financially secure manner, could lead us to having increased cash flows. So I think it fits the image, it fits the finances, and it really brands UDP as a unique developer that sees a new wave of the future. And that kind of brand can be applied to other projects in the future.
Any thought about what happens if you guys are wrong with 3 bedrooms?
So, the trend we've seen over the last several, Harmony, the Simon one that I mentioned, Spruce Street, we've seen them pre-lease about 75%. So, if the interest isn't there is some optionality on our part to tone it down and just put in more 1,200 square foot units.
And to add to that, I mean, if we get a commitment from a university, building a dorm is also a possibility, which is a quick in and quick out. And if the numbers are there and the interest is there, it could be an optionality that we're looking for. But again, we have to seek that out.
How realistic is their market without those?
Sure, I can speak to that. Sort of the only major comp that's happened recently was the Gramercy dorm that NYU bought on the corner of 23rd and 3rd. There was a condo development that in 2007 ran into financing trouble, and so NYU kind of actually swooped in and bought it, and they sort of retained the same layout that the condos would have had, and they just kind of converted it into a dorm. We know that NYU and also a few other schools from what we were reading about are seeing increased levels of students who want to live on campus and also in cities. So we think there's kind of there's going to be an organic demand for dorm space, and if we can position it correctly with the university, maybe this will be a good play.
So what's the capital market?
Sorry.
So what is the capital market?
In what sense do you mean? In
Financing.
we're not sure actually exactly. We didn't research that. That's something certainly.
I actually don't want to distract from this. We're recommending multifamily ultimately. Dorm's interesting. It's something to put on your radar. They're not throwing up dorms on Fifth Avenue in the end.
But as far as financing, if we can get a commitment from the university to buy it, I'm sure the financing will be there, the numbers are there. So.
So there's rezone, there's
Yes. We have 80 feet of Fifth Ave frontage. So for basically why wouldn't we use that for retail so long as it complements the multifamily? We wouldn't put in a liquor store and a check cashing place for an upscale apartment, but it would make sense to have, you know, a foreign flagship there if the rents are right, or even a Whole Foods likes to put themselves under apartments and condominiums because it's extra customers. For as far as rents,
For rents, we send $350 per square foot, and we were only allowed to lease the first floor for retail, and then the subgrade space. So if we got maybe a Whole Foods or like a Trader Joe's type tenant, then we could potentially lease that for a lower price. But we only included just the one floor retail, and it was 11,000 feet because we have a 1,000 foot lot.
yes, just quickly, 11,000 square feet, historically small. In the last 2 years, with bricks and mortar being taken over by online sales, we've seen retailers half their size in the last 2 years, and 12,000 seems to be about a good fit. And also, we're a bit conservative with the rent, to be fair. The average rent for the SoFi quarter is like $538, I believe. Gradually a little bit further down. Go.
On your unit mix page, you say you've got 106 units. On the next page, you say you have 110.
But the difference there, I think, is the vacancy assumption. We assume 4% vacancy, so that's probably the spread there.
Through the pro forma, on that column, you're showing 13 and NOI of 6,959. Under that, there's a line that says debt service of 6,501.
Yes, that's correct. Sort of in Midtown Manhattan, from our research, we found that sort of debt service coverage ratios about 1.2 aren't sort of out of the norm. Okay.
Right.
So
So actually, the initial construction loan, we were given in the case as a fixed cost, and it had nothing to do with market rates necessarily, it was just per square foot. And then for the, I think the perm loan this is for, this is multifamily trophy in the middle of Manhattan. So while it might give some people the heebie-jeebies from like 4 years ago, it's ultimately a pretty good play, and we'd actually have some equity reserves.
Where's the cash flow for your investors? What you're suggesting is the model is that there's no income to the investors, that all of the profit
both in the, I agree with you, it's both in the terminal value and actually when we refinance the construction loan and take out permanent financing, we have a large cash flow that goes to investors in year 2013. And in that year, sort of, it wasn't mentioned in the case, but we thought if we make a reserve as opposed to giving that cash right back, it would have sort of negative effect on our IRR, but it would certainly help in terms of financing because we'd have that reserve against the interest payments that we would have to make. And it's something we can follow.
Those numbers just don't look right. What was the underlying debt assumption? How much debt were you using?
The 70% that we were given.
So we were given a 70% loan to value.
Working with ratios.
Exactly, we were given 70% and we forecast out our NOI for that first operating year.
What year do you refinance?
It's 2013 is the year when we refinanced the construction, because the construction's finished then and the building becomes operational.
And then the value on that is brought back to a current stabilized value, and then 70% of that is the loan.
We'd just like to add, because we're giving a good chunk of equity back to the investors in 2013, instead of doing that, we could actually just take sort of a smaller loan, and then we would be less stressed in terms of debt service coverage, but we just took the maximum 70% loan in our model. But maybe you're right, it would be a better idea to take maybe like a 55% loan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the issue is just part of the framework.
I don't think that's achievable, and that coverage for 2013.
And so if we took sort of a smaller loan and instead of giving equity back, we'd have lower debt service payments.
I don't think you do that.
So if you're my lender, how do we repay this?
Are you using the same cap rates on the exit as current time?
5.5, yeah, both ways.
Any reason why?
We wanted to be conservative. We saw some properties, high quality multifamily assets right now are trading between 4 and 5, and we just wanted to be more conservative, so we assumed 5.5. We actually did a sensitivity as well that we could issue.
So last month, the Electra and another building in the 30s actually, both contracted, quoted at 4 caps, and they were buildings built in the 90s with inferior locations to this. So you could push for a lower cap rate, but 4 years out, we don't know. We don't know what the capital markets are going to look like at all, and if there's serious inflation not based on economic optimism, just inflation running rampant, then our cap rates are going to have some trouble, and it's hard to argue.
Thanks.